most dangerous moment isn't losing control. It's discovering how much you can live without it. I'm not writing this for the press, and not for another late-night recap of how I survived myself. I'm writing it to see if I can finally speak without makeup, without posture, without the reflex to perform. Back in October 2001, when Epic released Down to Earth, when we were tracking the record at Henson in Hollywood, I already knew how to smile like everything was under control. On the outside, it looked solid. A major label release, strong chart positions in the States, people saying I was back on my feet again. They talked about maturity, about growth. Inside, I didn't feel grown. I felt worn out, like I'd been walking around in a soaked coat I couldn't take off. And fear. Not the loud kind, the quiet pressure that sits on your throat and never quite lets you breathe. That stretch of time was strange. Ozfest ran smoothly. The money kept moving. The crowds showed up. And the whole thing felt disturbingly automatic. The machine worked, tickets sold, stages went up, fans screamed, and inside me there was still a hole that never closed. The label wanted another Ozzy record because the system has to be fed. Momentum is everything in this business. I said yes, not because I was bursting with ideas, but because stopping felt dangerous. If I stopped, I'd be alone with myself, and I didn't trust what I'd find there. Dreamer came out of that pressure, not out of some clean flash of inspiration, the way people like to tell it, but out of being trapped inside my own image. By the end of the 90s, after all the comebacks and collapses, I knew exactly what applause was worth. It doesn't heal anything, it just shuts things up for a minute. I called it energy. I called it adrenaline. Anything but the simplest word, the one that scared me most, emptiness. I'd spent so many years drowning that feeling with booze and pills that when I tried to stay sober in the early 2000s, what I felt wasn't relief. It was panic, like my skin had been peeled off and I was standing in cold air with nothing protecting me. I carried a long list behind me, stories people love to repeat like punchlines. The guy who got fired, the guy who came back, the fights, the scandals, the stunts that made me cringe later when memory came back in fragments. I got used to the audience expecting a monster, and sometimes I fed that monster myself because it brought attention. Somewhere along the way, I started confusing attention with love. That might be the dumbest mistake I ever made. Sharon, my wife, my manager, the person who kept both my career and my life from collapsing, moved through that period like an emergency dispatcher. Home, office, phone calls, schedules. Her voice could be soft, or it could cut like glass. I knew she wasn't just carrying contracts and tours. She was carrying my temperament, my damage, my failures, and I leaned on that. I took advantage of the fact that she was stronger. There's nothing romantic about that, and I'm not going to dress it up. In the studio, the people around me became mirrors, whether they meant to or not. Tim Palmer, the producer, was precise and calm. One question from him could shut me up completely. He didn't worship the name. He wanted a song, not a myth. Zach Wilde, my guitarist, my brother in everything but blood, came in loud and confident, that stubborn wolf energy of his filling the room. He believed in me, and I leaned on that belief without always thinking about what it cost him. Robert Trujillo, on bass, back then before the next chapter of his life opened up, stayed composed, like he always had an exit planned. Mike Bourdin sat behind the kit, steady and unflinching. There was something almost clinical in his rhythm. It held you in place without trying to soothe you. I remember the day the melody for Dreamer started sticking to me. There was no lightning bolt. It was morning. My head was painfully clear. My mouth was dry. My back ached from flights, and my chest felt like an empty room where noise usually lives. I paced the studio like a cage, listening to my own breathing. Even. Calm. That calm made me want to blow everything up. I caught myself thinking a drink would make singing easier. That was the line. I knew exactly what would happen if I crossed it. I'd wreck the session. I'd wreck the trust. I'd turn back into the version of myself everyone knew how to handle, the destructive one. And still, I went forward. Not to the bottle, but into the song. My heart was pounding in my temples. My palms were slick. My tongue felt foreign in my mouth. The process wasn't about technique. It was about whether I could stand my own voice without armor. Dreamer wouldn't let me growl. It needed space. It needed air. Every time I tried to sing it the old way, it sounded false. I could hear the lie. My throat burned like sandpaper. And I realized it wasn't sickness. It was resistance. My body had learned to defend itself with noise. Take after take, I felt the urge to decorate it, make it bigger, meaner, add poison so I wouldn't look weak. And every time, I had to step back from that instinct, like backing away from a ledge. I watched people around me move carefully. Not because they were afraid of the music, but because they were afraid of me. I saw it in small things. Cups placed quietly, extra check-ins. And that's where another kind of power showed up. Not stage power, the dirty, everyday kind. I could shut a room down with a look. I could humiliate someone with a joke. I could make everyone wait because I needed a moment. I liked how the room bent. I liked knowing I mattered more than their schedules. That's the ugly motivation no one likes to admit. The pleasure of owning the moment. There's an incident that still feels sticky when I think about it. A young assistant, running cables, trying not to get in the way, messed up something minor, delayed a setup. I exploded, not just raising my voice. I lost it, swearing, accusations. A big gesture so everyone could see who was in charge. I saw his lips shake. I saw him stare at the floor. And I felt a flicker of satisfaction. I didn't stop myself right away. I let it happen because I wanted to feel control. Later, when the room emptied, I knew I'd crossed the line on purpose. Not from stress, not from nerves, because it felt good. That kind of knowledge sticks under your nails. There was another choice from that time, quieter, but just as rotten. After a good take, I called home and told Sharon everything was going great. I wanted her to relax, to stop checking on me. It was a lie. I wasn't great. I was barely holding it together. I didn't lie to protect her. I lied to protect my space, to be left alone. That's control too, just dressed up nicer. When we came back to Dreamer, it was hard to look at the chart. The song was about people, about the planet, about how we turn on ourselves. And I had just acted out a small private version of that same thing. Tim stayed quiet. He didn't rescue me with words. Zach looked at me like he wanted to say I was doing it again, running the same loop. He didn't say it. That silence cut deeper than shouting. Why does the song sound so gentle? Because physically, I couldn't survive another battle anthem. I needed air. In that track, I wasn't trying to judge or punish. I was trying to witness. Later, I said it was my way of imagining a different world. Not because I was putting myself next to Lennon, but because I needed to believe, even for a minute, that things didn't have to be this filthy. And even imagining that hurt. I wanted to say we could stop. I couldn't say that I wasn't sure I could stop myself. I couldn't admit that part of the calm in that song was calculated. I knew the audience would eventually get tired of the eternal monster and want to see a crack. I gave them the crack carefully. Enough to work, not enough to kill the image. That's the confession that still tastes the worst. I negotiated with my own honesty. When the video started running on MTV, when the song climbed the rock charts, people told me they loved the human side. What I felt wasn't love. It was pressure. Now, I was supposed to be a different version of myself, like I'd put on a new suit. Every suit tightens eventually. The meaning of dreamer isn't hope or morality to me. It's an open question I didn't have the right to close with a clean ending. The song is like a window cracked open, and the draft scares you as soon as you feel it. People hear calm. I hear someone trying not to scream. There's silence in it, but it's not comfortable. It's the pause right before you do something you know you'll regret, and watch it scatter. I don't want to end this with a conclusion. That year, I'd leave the studio, sit in the car, stare at my hands, and think, they're steady today, which means tomorrow they might not be. I still think that sometimes, and honestly, I don't know if that song made me kinder. Maybe I just learned how to hide my teeth better, in the dark.